Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to stand at the absolute edge of existence? To face the darkness that most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid? What if I told you that there is a man who lived through exactly that and came back with a message that could transform the way you see your own life forever? 7 days. That's all it took for his entire understanding of reality to shatter and rebuild itself. But here's what's truly remarkable. He didn't just survive what happened to him. He came back changed, awakened. And the lessons he learned in those 7 days of unimaginable darkness contained truths that could literally save your life, maybe not physically, but spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. If you're willing to listen with an open heart, this story will challenge everything you thought you knew about suffering, purpose, and divine intervention. Our story begins not in darkness, but in what appeared to be an ordinary life. This man, let's call him Michael, had built a comfortable existence. He had success, material comfort, and the respect of those around him. But beneath the surface, something was rotting. He lived disconnected from any deeper purpose. His days were filled with endless pursuits of things that left him feeling hollow. He'd achieved everything society told him to want, yet he felt more lost than ever. That's when the breaking point came. Not as a dramatic collapse, but as a creeping realization. Everything he'd built was sand. One moment, his carefully constructed world came crashing down. And in that moment of complete psychological and spiritual devastation, something unexpected happened. He wasn't offered comfort or escape. Instead, he experienced what he could only describe as a descent into absolute darkness. The 7 days began not with thunder or apocalyptic visions, but with silence. An overwhelming, suffocating silence that seemed to swallow every hope, every memory of joy, every reason to continue. Michael describes it as existing in a space between consciousness and unconsciousness, aware enough to suffer fully, yet detached enough to observe his own suffering. The darkness wasn't external, it was internal. It was the manifestation of every fear he'd ever repressed, every doubt he'd buried, every moment of disconnection he'd accumulated. In this state, he confronted the void at the center of his existence. The emptiness he'd been running from his entire life became inescapable. Most people would have broken completely. The human mind isn't designed to face such raw, unfiltered truth about itself without psychological protection. But Michael kept walking deeper into that darkness, not because he was strong, but because he had nowhere else to go. Here's where the experience becomes profound. In that darkness, Michael couldn't lie to himself anymore. There's no ego in hell. There's no pretense. Every rationalization, every comfortable story he told himself about who he was and why his life mattered, it all dissolved. He saw himself with absolute clarity, not with judgment or condemnation, but with raw, uncompromising truth. He understood that his pain, his emptiness, his disconnection, these weren't punishments. They were consequences of choices, of a life spent building towers that had nothing to do with his actual soul. And that realization was simultaneously devastating and liberating, because with that truth came a strange kind of peace. He finally understood that he was responsible. Not in a way that invited shame, but in a way that invited power. On what Michael calls the 5th day in darkness, though time had become meaningless, something shifted. In the midst of his descent, he experienced a moment of recognition. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't a vision, it was a knowing. A sudden, overwhelming awareness that he wasn't alone. That beneath and beyond all of his suffering, there was something else, a presence, an intelligence, a love that didn't stop loving him even while he was experiencing the consequences of his choices. This is the turning point. This is where the story transcends personal trauma and enters the realm of the divine. Michael felt, for the first time, that his suffering had meaning. Not because God was punishing him, but because God refused to let him continue destroying himself. The darkness was, in a way, God's most intense form of love, the willingness to let him face what needed to be faced so that true transformation could occur. By the 7th day, Michael's entire being had shifted. The rescue didn't come as escape, it came as transformation. His mind began to clear. The suffocating weight gradually lifted, but he wasn't the same person emerging from that darkness. Something fundamental had changed. He understood now that his life wasn't meant to be a collection of achievements. It was meant to be a journey of becoming. He saw his past struggles not as failures, but as necessary steps that had been preparing him for this very moment of awakening. The rescue, he realized, wasn't about returning to his old life. It was about being free to live an entirely new one. One rooted in purpose, authenticity, and genuine spiritual connection. The first truth Michael brought back from his 7 days is this: your pain is not meaningless. I know that sounds almost cruel to say to someone who's suffering, but here's what he learned. The pain, the darkness, the suffering you experience isn't random punishment from an indifferent universe. It's actually the universe, or God, if you prefer, refusing to let you waste your life on things that don't matter. Every genuine suffering is an invitation. An invitation to wake up, to reassess, to realign with what's actually true about yourself and your purpose. Michael came back understanding that the hell he experienced wasn't primarily about physical or emotional pain. It was about disconnection. The true hell is living disconnected from your authentic self, from your purpose, from genuine spiritual reality. This is the lesson that can save lives. Because so many people are living in a personal hell right now, and they don't even realize it. They're disconnected from meaning. They're disconnected from authentic relationships. They're disconnected from the divine. And that disconnection manifests as depression, anxiety, emptiness, and a gnawing sense that something is fundamentally wrong. Michael's message is clear. Reconnection is salvation. Finding your way back to authenticity, to purpose, to spiritual reality. That's the true rescue. Perhaps the most transformative understanding Michael gained is this: the very darkness he experienced became his greatest teacher. The suffering didn't destroy him. It refined him. Now he sees with spiritual eyes. Now he understands others' pain with genuine compassion because he's been to the bottom himself. His 7 days in darkness gave him the ability to help others find their way out of theirs. This is crucial. Your darkest moments, your deepest suffering, your most intense struggles, these don't have to be wasted. They can become the foundation of profound service to others. They can become your calling. Michael returned to his normal life, but nothing about it was normal anymore. His relationships transformed because he showed up with authentic presence instead of protective walls. His work transformed because he aligned it with genuine purpose instead of just chasing success. His relationship with himself transformed because he stopped criticizing and started nurturing. This is what awakening does. It doesn't change your circumstances. It changes your relationship to your circumstances. And when that shifts, everything shifts. Michael's final message, the one he wants you to understand, is this: you don't have to descend into hell to find awakening. You don't have to hit rock bottom to find redemption. But you do need to wake up, right now, today, in this very moment. His 7 days were his wake-up call. What's yours? What is the universe? What is God trying to tell you? What patterns do you keep repeating? What pain keeps returning? What disconnection keeps haunting you? These aren't enemies. They're messengers. They're invitations to come home to yourself. They're the voice of divine love refusing to let you waste your precious life. Michael's story isn't exceptional because he went through something unique. It's exceptional because he chose to listen. He chose to face what he found in the darkness instead of running from it. He chose transformation instead of escape. And now, years later, he lives with a clarity, a peace, and a purpose that most people spend their entire lives searching for. That choice is available to you too, right now. You don't need to wait for your own 7-day descent. You can choose awakening today. You can choose to examine your life with honest eyes. You can choose to reconnect with what matters. You can choose to transform your suffering into wisdom and your darkness into light. If this message has resonated with you, if something inside you recognized the truth in these words, then I'm asking you to do 3 things. First, share this story with someone you know who needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling. Someone who's disconnected. Someone who's lost in their own darkness. Second, comment below and tell me, what's your wake-up call? What is the universe asking you to see about your life? And third, subscribe to this channel because we're dedicating ourselves to exploring these deep spiritual truths that transform lives. Because your awakening matters, your journey matters, and your purpose, discovered in the darkness and brought back into the light, is waiting for you.